Welcome, dreamers. Ready to relax and unwind? Get comfy and let our soft night tales take you to magical places. Enjoy.
In a world where warmth has vanished and the sun no longer rises, there's one flame left to save everything. But the cost of rekindling it is more than anyone could imagine. Would you sacrifice everything to save your world? Aethera was once a world of life, vibrant colors, endless forests, and bright summers. The land was rich with magic, where elves, dwarves, and goblins lived in harmony with nature. At the heart of Aethera stood the Ember, a magical flame that had kept the land thriving. But that warmth had long since faded. Now, the land is dying. The ember is flickering and the sun no longer shines. For years, Elena, an elven healer, has wandered the world searching for a way to restore the flame. She knows that the ember must be reignited or Aethera will fall into eternal cold. This is her journey to save the world, and the price she must pay to do it. Elena had always known that the ember was the lifeblood of Aethera. It was said to have been created in the fires of the first dawn, a gift from the gods themselves. For centuries, it burned brightly, protecting the world from the harshness of winter. But now, for reasons no one could explain, the ember was dying. The once vibrant flame was reduced to a flicker, barely keeping the land from being consumed by ice and cold. Elena, a gifted healer, had watched as villages crumbled under the weight of the unrelenting winter. She had seen people, once full of life, succumb to the frost, their warmth drained from them. Her magic, once powerful, was now fading too, no longer strong enough to keep the cold at bay. She had heard whispers of the heart of the Ice Forge, a place that many believed held the key to restoring the ember. But the journey was treacherous, and no one who had ventured there had returned. Elena knew that the ember was her last hope, not just for herself, but for all of Aethera. Elena didn't embark on her journey alone. At her side was Ilyar, a dwarf who had long been her companion. Ilyar wasn't a healer like Elena, but his strength, his vast knowledge of the ancient arts, and his connection to the old forges made him the perfect companion. He was a skilled blacksmith and had forged many of Aethera's weapons, some of which had been used to battle the forces of winter. His fiery temper, though often amusing, was matched only by his loyalty. "I don't like it," Ilyar muttered, tightening the straps of his worn leather armor. "This journey. It feels like a fool's errand." "I know," Elena replied softly, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. "But if we don't try, then Aethera has no future." They trekked through the frozen wilderness for weeks, fighting off the cold, battling wild beasts that had been twisted by the frost, and crossing snow-covered peaks. As they moved farther into the heart of Aethera, the land itself seemed to grow colder, darker. The rivers had frozen solid, and the once lush forests were now nothing more than barren, skeletal trees. The air was thick with snow, and the sun had long since disappeared. One evening, while they camped near the edge of a desolate valley, they heard the distant howls of Wurgens. These monstrous, wolf-like creatures had become increasingly hostile, and Elena knew that they were not only hungry but also driven mad by the cold. Ilyar stood guard as Elena prepared a defensive spell to protect them. As the creatures closed in, Elena's magic flared to life, forming a protective shield around them. But she knew it wouldn't last forever. Ilyar drew his axe, his face a mask of determination. With a shout, he charged into the pack, his weapon cleaving through the monstrous beasts. Elena followed, her healing magic washing over Ilyar as he fought, protecting him from the wounds the creatures inflicted. It was a brutal battle, but they managed to fight off the Wurgens, leaving the valley in silence once again. After the fight, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. She glanced over her shoulder, but the only thing visible was the endless stretch of snow. She couldn't explain it, but she knew the worst was still to come. Their journey took them to a small village nestled on the outskirts of the Ice Forge, Lyraspan. The village was a somber place, its people cloaked in heavy furs, their faces pale and hollow. The cold had claimed many lives, and those still alive were barely holding on. It was here they met Miran, a young girl who had lost her family to the frost. Miran was frail, her skin pale as snow, and she lay in a makeshift bed in a small, dimly lit home. Her breathing was shallow, and her body trembled in the cold. The villagers had no more supplies, no more hope. They had all resigned themselves to the inevitable, but when Elena saw Miran, something sparked in her. The girl's spirit was not yet broken. Elena approached her, her heart aching for the child. "Don't be afraid," Elena whispered as she knelt beside her. "I will do what I can to help you." Elena used her magic to warm the girl's body and heal the worst of her wounds. But the cold that had taken root in Miran's body was unlike anything Elena had ever encountered. It was deeper, colder, a sickness of the world itself. Elena stayed with Miran through the night, using every spell she knew, but it was clear that unless the ember could be restored, there was no cure for the cold. The villagers, desperate and weak, gathered around the small fire that barely kept the chill away. "You must be careful," healer and elder warned her. "The heart of the ice forge is not a place for the living. No one has returned from it." Elena didn't respond. She could hear the truth in their words, but she knew the risk was worth it. She turned to Ilyar, who had been silent, lost in thought. "We must go," she said. "The ember is dying. If we don't act now, everything will be lost." The path to the ice forge was treacherous. Snowstorms raged on, and the mountains grew steeper and more treacherous as they neared their destination. Along the way, they encountered the remnants of forgotten ruins, ancient temples, and long-abandoned roads that had once been traversed by those seeking to protect the land. But as they climbed higher, the world around them grew eerily silent. The wind howled, the sky darkened, and even the air felt thick with magic. It was as though the very land itself was holding its breath, waiting for them to reach the heart of the storm. The closer they got, the more Elena felt the pressure of their mission. She had spent so long trying to save Aethera, but with each step, the burden felt heavier. She thought of Miran, of the villagers, and of the countless lives that depended on them. Finally, after days of travel, they reached the gates of the ice forge. The entrance was an ancient stone door, adorned with carvings of flames and frost. The cold emanated from it like a living force. Elena and Ilyar stood before it, exhausted and unsure of what awaited them. The doors of the ice forge creaked open with a groan, revealing an immense cavern of ice and stone. The temperature inside was unbearable, and the walls seemed to shimmer with an unnatural glow. At the heart of the cavern stood the ember, encased in a crystalline sphere. It flickered weakly, casting a faint glow that barely illuminated the dark chamber. As Elena approached, a voice boomed from the depths of the ice forge. "Why do you seek the ember?" The voice was ancient, cold, and filled with an overwhelming power. Elena stepped forward, her heart racing. "I seek to restore the ember. To bring warmth back to Aethera." A massive ice spirit materialized before them, its form towering over them like a mountain of frost. Its eyes were cold as the deepest winter, and its voice was like 1,000 storms. "To restore the ember, you must sacrifice what you cherish most," the spirit declared. Elena felt the knot form in her stomach. She had known the cost would be high, but this was unimaginable. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaking. The spirit's icy eyes locked onto hers. "You are the ember's chosen, but to reignite it, you must give up your magic, the very thing that gives you life. Without it, you will be mortal. You will no longer be able to heal or protect your world." Elena's heart sank. The idea of losing her magic, of becoming ordinary, was almost too much to bear. But in that moment, she realized something. The ember had always been a symbol of life, of warmth, of hope. If she could give up her magic to restore it, then perhaps she could finally save Aethera. With a deep breath, Elena stepped forward, placing her hand on the ember. She felt the coldness of the spirit reach deep inside her, draining her magic, her essence. It was painful, but she didn't pull away. Slowly, the ember grew brighter, its flame flickering to life once more. The cold receded, the darkness lifted, and warmth began to return to the land. But Elena, her magic now gone, collapsed to the floor, exhausted and weakened. Ilyar rushed to her side, his hands shaking. The world began to heal. Aethera slowly awakened from its frozen slumber. The forest began to bloom again, and the snow melted, revealing the lush lands beneath. Miren, who had been brought to the ice forge in the hopes of saving her, awoke with a newfound strength. The ember had been restored, and life returned to Aethera. Elena, now mortal, had given everything for the world she loved. She had no regrets. The ember was alive, and with it, Aethera would thrive once more. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful journeys and bedtime tales. Thank you for being part of our community.